Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time to talk about the DC Comics for September 20th, 2022. Big week, a lot of DC books out there. We are going to do a separate episode for the Harley Quinn 30th anniversary 100-page special, just in the interest of trying to keep this under 4 hours. We always tend to ramble on a little
Good
too long.
God. Yeah.
So
Huge
yeah,
week.
I thought it was a really solid week. Some great books. Nightwing was great. DC's War of the Gods had maybe my favorite Guy Gardner characterization ever. World's Finest was great. Flash was great. Yeah, really good. Really good week. What'd you think, Rock?
Yeah, I thought it was. Well, I honestly, I think there's a lot of comics this week. I think that I think if I was to add them all up, I would say that I enjoyed probably slightly under half of them. Like mediocrity defined most of it, but there was like about four or five that I thought were I'm glad I read. The other ones were okay and kind of meh, but that's to be expected. Like, again, there's a lot of comics, and I shouldn't be expected to like all of them, but we'll get into it. We'll have some fun. We'll have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, not every comic can be a home run, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off with the aforementioned World's Finest, written by Mark Waid. Dan Mora is the artist. Tamra Bonvillain does the color. Steve Wan's on letters. Some really interesting ideas here from Mark Waid. This is issue 7, I should mention. And there's a new character. He's right there on the front cover. Haven't necessarily been given a name. I mean, it does say Meet the Boy of Thunder on the cover, but that's not, I mean, it's a little bit tongue in cheek. We do meet him in the issue. We learn his name. We see that he comes from another reality. And what's interesting is that in that, and there's all these mirrors, right? These kind of analogs or themes or similarities between this boy and Superman, because this boy, his name is David Sakella. His parents are both scientists. Like I said, another reality or another Earth in the DC multiverse. His parents are both scientists, much like Superman. He comes from Gotham as opposed to Krypton. But he does get launched in a rocket, this rocket traveling through the multiverse as opposed to traveling through space, but leaves at the moment that Gotham explodes, right? So there's all these parallels and similarities between this boy and Superman. And when he does arrive in Gotham, he realizes he's in an alternate universe, wants to go see his parents, goes and introduces, which kid seems pretty smart. Like, wouldn't you be looking for your own self? But turns out the David Sakella of this universe died when he was 3 years old. You sort of wonder why, if his parents wouldn't have recognized him. So it's a little wonky there. And the other thing that kind of gets me about these World's Finest, I'm never quite sure, what exactly is the timeline for this? Because, we saw in the first story arc of World's Finest that it was supposedly in the past, right? Because wasn't it Dick Grayson Robin that Supergirl took back in time? But then at
Yeah.
the end of it, we saw the Damian version of Robin accessing the tomb of Nezha on Lazarus Island. So I guess that was a time jump. That's how it's all working out. Because again, this one, it's Dick Grayson Robin, and everything seems a little more, I don't want to say innocent, but clearly this is happening in the past. So how does that reconcile with what's going on in the rest of DCU? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I should throw that out and stop worrying about that and just enjoy the story for what it is, because it is really enjoyable. And what the sense that I got and what I was thinking of and what I was reminded of when I was reading this is how much Mark Waid loves Superman. It's his favorite character. What a great job he does telling Superman stories, even though this is World's Finest and the characterization for Batman is great as well. Here's the thing. It's like, even though this is World's Finest and it's a Batman and a Superman story, Robin is there as well. They don't feel like the driving forces of the story, right? This doesn't necessarily feel character driven, but it's not to say that it's plot driven either. Really, I would say the main character of this particular issue of this arc is David Sakella himself, this new character that's introduced. He's sort of the driving force. And so it's so interesting because clearly you can see Wade's love of Superman and how he's drawing parallels to Superman in this this young boy, Boy Thunder or whatever, Thunder Boy. Um, but it really just makes me want to see Mark Waid just give him the Superman book already. Not that I don't enjoy seeing the Doom Patrol in the hands of Mark Waid, or Batman and Superman interaction between Mark Waid, but he has such great ideas. And especially if at the end of Dark Crisis we're going to get some sort of reset or clean start, or clean slate, or fresh start, or however you want to put it.
A dawn
Like,
of the DC universe.
yeah, give it to Mark Waid. Let him, you know what I mean? Like, I know that you have mentioned Secret Identity. We've talked about that before, how much you loved that Waid did that and how it was sort of a reset. But then like within, I think, less than a year, they got rid of it, or a little over a year. It was definitely less than 2 years.
You mean Birthright?
Birthright.
You
Yeah,
mean
Birthright.
Superman
Sorry.
Birthright? Yeah.
Yeah, Birthright. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want a Mark Waid. I want a Mark Waid, like what Bendis did with Man of Steel, what John Byrne did with Man of Steel. I know it hasn't been that long since Bendis jumped on Superman, but I wouldn't mind a third Man of Steel by Mark Waid to kind of do another reset, in whatever way he wants to do it. And I'm kind of curious, like, if they did do that and they got rid of John Kent completely, like, turn back time or what have you. Lois is not married. I know there was a big backlash when they did it to Peter and MJ over in Marvel. I just wonder what would happen if like, God, is it worse to have John Kent artificially aged up and miss out on his childhood, or is it worse to have him erased completely, but then knowing, well, Mark Waid's probably going to get back to that point at some point if they, like, I think if you let him, Mark Waid would write Superman for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
But like, give me, like, I know, and I know it doesn't happen anymore, and publishers don't want it to happen. I've been told by editors, I've been told by writers, yeah, they don't want big long runs. 2 years is about as long as they want. Now, I don't really understand that myself, because, man, I really would like a big long run. Give me 5 or 6 years of Mark Waid on Superman, and we could get to the point where, we had Lois and Clark get married. We could even get to the point maybe where John was born. But yeah, I say all that to say I love what Mark Waid is doing here. But I wonder if we cut out the clutter, and it's funny for me to call Batman clutter, but because it's clear that he writes Superman so well. And the other thing I'll mention real quick is that the Dan Mora art is absolutely fantastic. It's so good. The guy's just, he doesn't get enough credit for how fantastic he is. From the first page, Doomed Planet, we get a lot of storytelling. That's all the dialogue. We get Doomed Planet on the opening page, and then we get a double page spread, Desperate Scientist's Last Hope. And this is all told with no other words, right? We see this parallel, again, very similar to the origin of Superman leaving planet Krypton. It says it's Gotham City. It's a futuristic looking Gotham City. And that's all we need. Yeah. Everything else is told through visual storytelling by Dan Mora's art. And that's where the parallels come in, because I had to go back. Like, I got to the double page spread and I flipped back to the previous page. I'm like, wait a second, that said Gotham City, Doomed Planet. But this is Superman's origin in so many ways.
That's a callback to All-Star Superman, Grant Morrison. That's how he started off All-Star Superman.
Yeah. So again, I thought it was fantastic. He does write Superman. He writes all these characters with a little bit of an innocence that I really enjoy. Dick Grayson as well. It's kind of a throwback in a lot of ways to the more dark and gritty DC universe that we've had for so long. Even when we see the Teen Titans show up on the last page, with Aqualad in his old costume and Kid Flash, Wally West in his old costume, it's definitely a throwback to a little bit of a brighter time in the DCU. And then immediately juxtaposed against that, the last page, almost like an epilogue, with this Keymaster character, whoever that is, killing somebody. It's about as dark as you can get. So anyway, I thought it was fantastic. What do you think? This
is modern day. This is Silver Age storytelling in the modern day. That's why it works. Yeah, right. And it works so well because he's a master at telling those types of stories with a Silver Age sensibility, but with a modern day twist, and it works. And because these characters, it's in the past of these heroes in the younger years, we get these are in fact brand new stories, but they're rewriting a lot of they're interjecting new characters in DC Heroes past, which is what they should be doing, quite frankly. And in fact, it worked to great effect in the first 6 issues, which led in to Robin versus Batman, and where we get the return of Alfred, and we got the Demon Nezha, and that's changing the mythology of the Lazarus Pit and what have you. And we're getting some excitement there. And in this issue, we have Hyper Time. We have a boy who's a young boy, this David Sakella, who is leaving a doomed planet, another planet that's within Hyper Time, because we know at the end of Dark Crisis, we know that we're going to have a multiverse with Hyper Time. And so now we've had Hyper Time for quite a long time already, but frankly, this is incorporating the new dawn of the DC universe, frankly, sensibilities, utilizing the new language moving forward, which is we're going to be getting a lot of undoubtedly Hyper Time related stories in conjunction with the multiverse and the infinite number of Earths, which are returning. And so this is Mark Waid just, I think, doing the natural thing, telling great stories, simple stories, but with heart. And I mean, this is just riddled with heart. Who Superman can relate to this David Sakella character. He comes to this world. He loses his parents in another parallel universe within Hypertime, and the parents in this world are basically they had a son. They had a son, but his own version, his counterpart in our world, has died at the age of 3. And so he's trying to find his place, and it's nice to see Robin introduce him to the Teen Titans. And it was nice to see that at the end, Superman is going to try to incorporate this David Sakella into his Superman family. So this is a way of retroactively expanding the Superman family that might work quite well. And I'm really looking forward to it, because now I'm wondering, because I know we know what Mark Waid did in the first 6 issues of World's Finest, how that led to and formed part of, we know, Robin versus Batman and the Demon Nezha. Are we going to be seeing this David Sakella in the mainstream, in the modern day DCU moving forward? And this is actually a very interesting character, organic. Already, I feel like I know this David Sakella, and I'm actually looking forward to it. And I thought this issue was very well done, and another check mark in Mark Waid's DC echelon. I mean, amazing the difference. I mean, Mark Waid he's only written a handful of DC comics. You know, he hasn't written a heck of a lot since he came to DC, and we didn't have great big signs saying Mark Waid is coming. You know, Waid is coming. You know, not like Bendis, and yet he's made infinitely more of a significant landing than Bendis ever did. And talk about leaving with a whimper. I mean, that's what Bendis is doing. But yeah, but no, I enjoyed this. This is for me. This is tied for number 1 favorite of the week. So we're starting off with one of my favorite comics this week.
Yeah, it was that idea that Bruce says, "Oh, to Clark, you're going to be a father. You know, you're going to have a family." That's what made me realize. Wait, how does this? Like, he has a family. He has a son. Oh wait. No, this is in the past, and so that's what made me kind of stand up and take notice of that. So anyway, let's move on. Next up, we have Catwoman number 47. This is written by Tinny Howard. Caitlin Yarsky is on the art, Jordi Belair on colors, Tom Napolitano and Josh Reed on letters. Pretty cool cover from Jeff DeCall, that main cover as well. What do you think?
First, I want to give a shout out to Jeff DeCall. I'm loving every single one of the covers. My personal thing, the opposite of a pet peeve for me when it comes to covers is I love loving cover A's. I personally feel very, very strongly that we fans deserve to have the best cover being cover A's. And I think day in and day out, Jeff DeCall's Catwoman covers have been the best covers, not the 1 in 25s, not the variants, not that other nonsense of the cover B's that you got to pay an extra $1 more because they put it on harder cardboard and that nonsense. I love the best cover should be cover A and actually have some thematic relationship to the content of the comic. And we've been getting that in these Catwoman covers by Jeff DeCall, and to great effect. So I quite enjoy that. Now, moving on to the story itself, we actually have this story. So it builds on writer Tinny Howard is building on some of the storylines she's introduced in previous issues. In particular, the Catwoman and Valmont are traveling to Switzerland in this issue to where they get involved in sort of sort of a mafia related shenanigans with one of the uh, mafia kingpin of Gotham, Sullivan. Yeah, this is where Finbar Sullivan, a mobster, he goes to vacation, and Finbar's brother is this Declan, who has a wife named Abigail, and they're trying to take over the operation from Finbar. And so there's a lot of inner workings of the mob going on here that Selina and Valmont have sort of stumbled onto. And this issue, Teeny Howard tries to tease the fact that Selina and Valmont have kind of a have a it's kind of will they or won't they kind of relationship. It's kind of been hinted at that they've had sexual relations, but I don't know if they have or not. But there's some sexual tension here in their dialogue, and they're both of them are even sort of having a little bit of a mini contest, flirting with the stewardess as they're flying to Switzerland. And so I actually kind of enjoyed the dialogue here. I think I get the sense that Teeny Howard is having a little bit of fun. Teeny Howard is clearly trying to empower the women in this comic. It's Abigail, who is the wife of this Declan character who wants to take over the mafia operations, and she's definitely about empowering the women in this. We see strong themes of Teeny Howard doing that early on with Selina trying. Selina is all about protecting women, and in fact, she even gets very angry at one point. She gets angry at Valmont in this issue when she feels that maybe Valmont has sort of betrayed her at one point, and but. In any event, I thought this was quite good. They end up coming across this character who's sort of the glorified international financier of Finbar named Esconda, and Esconda is worried that he's being used as a pawn in this game between Declan and Finbar. And uh, in the midst of all this, we get Dario, who we in the first story arc, he is the he's the gay son of one of the other mafia figures who was in love with another character who it wants to betray him, and I'm trying to remember his name. There's Dario or Noah, and Noah and Dario are sort of like they're lovers, and Noah wants to take over the mafia operations of his father, and Dario's actually the son who's supposed to inherit it. But in any event, so you got Noah has wants to get revenge on Dario, but they have a relationship with each other. They have a past relationship, so not really sure what's going on with Noah and Dario. Is Noah seemingly kidnaps Dario, and it ends with Dario contacting Catwoman and Valmont in Switzerland, asking them for help, but they can't help him because they're in Switzerland and he's in Gotham, and so they have to find their way back to try to rescue Dario. But I'm not sure if Dario really needs rescuing. I get the sneaking suspicion that Noah might have a hard time killing Dario because they did have a previous intimate relationship, and there might be some relationship issues there, and maybe Noah's true agenda isn't to kill Dario after all. So Teeny Howard is clearly playing with doing a lot of character work here. It's a little choppy in parts, transition from scene to scene, but I think it marks a continued improvement in what Teeny Howard's been doing. Because I enjoyed her first story arc, and I think this is getting on track, and I enjoyed some of the character work here. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you about the choppiness of it. That's kind of been a trademark of the series since she took over. Um, and I kind of give her a little bit of a pass on it because I know it's just because she's got such big ideas and she's trying to tell such a big story and scope. There's not always room, and it doesn't always flow as much as it can. But when I look at the previous run, which may be my favorite run of Catwoman ever, but from Rom V, where I kept comparing it to a Michael Mann movie, and especially with what Fernando Blanco did with art. But the one thing I will say about it is it as stylistic as it was and as fantastic as it was, and the way that it evoked that kind of neo crime feel of something like Heat or Manhunter or Thief or whatever, any of those classic Michael Mann crime thrillers. The one thing that I always was left feeling was like I wanted more. It's really hard to translate that feeling into a comic, and they did that really well. But it really feels like, even though Rom V was on the book for over a year, it feels like we basically got one short arc. We didn't get that much. Like Catwoman showed up in in the neighborhood and kind of took it over. And then there was this like one fight, this one arc with the, the cop and with Catwoman's sister. And that was it, even though it was like over 12 issues, but again, it was because capturing that feel and making sure the story flowed. So Tinny is not, falling into that same trap, but on the flip side of that, it's that it does feel choppy at times because the pace is quicker just to try to get the story out. So again, I I sense it, I see it, I understand why it's happening, and I will also give her credit that that doesn't mean that we lose character moments, because we still have great character moments. In fact, we have a great scene with Catwoman and Valmount on the airplane to open the issue. So we still get plenty of great character moments. I like what she's doing. Um, I've liked what she's doing all along, except for those Harley issues. That like the more this goes along, and she's building this as this really mob focused crime story with Catwoman pitted against these different crime families. The more it goes along, and the more it's built, and you see the foundation and seeds planted and payoff, the less that road trip, side trip, whatever you want to call it, with Harley makes sense. Like, it just, am I wrong? I mean, it just feels so
No, I
wildly
agree.
out
It's
of
better
place.
when she's telling her own story. That Harley story really did feel like a side trip. It was like a collateral story. She just wanted to get it out of her system and do a Harley story, but it felt disjointed. It didn't really feel connected to this
Yeah, the
overall
art.
mafia
Yeah,
story. Yeah.
the art was so different as well. So yeah, but I am liking what's going on here. Not familiar with this artist, Caitlin Yarsky, but she does a pretty solid job.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, she's
yeah, the
pretty good.
storytelling is great. Her choices for what shows up in the panel is all great. Little stylized, little static at times, but overall, I thought it was really really strong. So good issue of Catwoman. All right, up next we have Dark Crisis Young Justice #4 from writer Megan Fitzmartin. Laura Braga is the artist, Luis Guerrero and Hi-Fi on the colors, Pat Brosso on the letters. We finally find out who's behind this alternate reality that Bart and Tim and Connor have been pulled into. We did see the hat that this character is wearing previously as kind of a hint. Um, I talked to Megan Fitzmartin at San Diego Comic-Con and had some guesses about who it was based on the hat. One of my guesses was never Mixius Pitalik. I never thought the big bad in this was going to be the son of Mixius Pitalik. Um, and Megan was like, "Yeah, it's a real hush hush." Um, I'm not going to say whether or not I convinced her to tell me who it was or not. But what I will say is, if I did convince her to tell me, I was sworn to secrecy. And if she did tell me, I did not share it with anybody else. That's not to say that she told me, because that may not have happened, or it may have. But either way, now that you see him wearing the cap and it's purple and it sort of mirrors the bowler hat that Mixius Pitalik wears, it makes total sense. Really excited to see a son of Mixius Pitalik. Mickey is his name, because I think it opens up some really cool story ideas. I also like, and this is one of the few times where I would love if you could just add a sound effect into a comic. Um, because I love that she chose record scratch as kind of the thing to, throw you when things in this particular issue are a surprise. It's Connor that narrates, and he mentions record scratch a couple times. And man, if that wasn't the perfect noise to hear in your head when Mickey Mixius Pitalik shows up, I don't know what is. So as far as advancing the story, this particular issue really doesn't. This issue is about the relationship between Cassie and Sissy, reiterating how Bart feels, kind of that Tim and Connor treat him as a sidekick, and then the reveal of Mickey rather, Mixius Pitalik. But as far as how this is going to be resolved, what this reality really is for, we sort of don't get it. There's been different theories that our three protagonists who've been trapped have all sort of put out there. But I do feel like, and Rocky, you can let me know if I'm correct in this or not. I do feel like this series is really kind of paying off, or is a richer experience for those that have read Young Justice. I have read none of Young Justice. I don't have any context or any history with it, so it's hard for me to say if that's actually true, because they do reference, and we saw it when the series started off, that they were fighting, classic Young Justice villains and making reference to things that happened in the past. And they sort of metatextually in this issue are talking about that. Hey, yeah, when we fought Empowered, when we fought so and so, and even at one point they're saying, why are Connor, I think, is saying, why are we fighting against this world? Isn't this what we've wanted? I don't want to go back to the other world where I've died before. Why not stay here? What are we fighting against? So that's a really interesting perspective to have. And a quick note on the cover: I thought they were both good, but I thought the Serge Acuna cover I enjoyed even more. That second variant cover with Cassie, who is a character I really enjoy. I really enjoyed that cover. Thought it was fantastic. So so give us your perspective as somebody who has a little more history than I do with Young Justice.
Well, I've consistently I enjoyed issue 1 because it felt like the characters. It felt like an old issue with that. I forget the name with the big bosom. It was just funny. I mean, I thought
Wasn't it the Mighty Endowed?
Yeah, the Mighty Endowed. That's what it was. Yeah, and I had a lot of fun with that. But unfortunately, while I'll give Megan Fitzpatrick a lot of props for doing that, that very clearly was played like a joke, and it was all part of how she's right. Let me back up and say this for. I wish she would have written this like Mark Waid is approaching World's Finest. I would rather have had an older story that took place in the past with the characters of the Young Justice, as opposed to this newer story that takes place in the present, where they're clearly in an off world that's been created by Mickey Mixopatelik or whatever, is the son of Mixoplik or Patelik or whatever, because everything that could be funny isn't really funny, because they're always giving this meta commentary about, oh, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't feel, well, that's because you're older. That's because this isn't actually really Young Justice. The characters here aren't young anymore. And so it doesn't feel like Young Justice to me. It did in the first issue because I thought they were going to continue to embrace that and have some fun with it. But now it's just being played. Well, now it's like this Mickey character, the son of Mixias Pitalik, he's just playing games with them, and that's all well and good. I will give props to Megan Fitzpatrick because she's trying to have some fun, and also I'm really going to give her. I'm cutting her a lot of slack because she really was biting off more than I think any writer could be expected to chew with Young Justice, given the ridiculously convoluted history of these characters. I think she's done as good a job as any new writer I can expect. So I say that I say that with a great amount of respect. For me, this doesn't feel like Young Justice. I just wish they would have just told her, write a Young Justice story. And why not write a Young Justice story and then at the end relate it to these characters, as have these characters looking back on an old Young Justice adventure, and then tie that past adventure into the future, kind of like what Mark Waid did in the first 6 issues. That that would have worked better for me, and had them look back and laugh at the Mighty Endowed and all the nonsense that they got into in the 90s, because this is almost like a commentary on how sexist the 90s were, and how different, how much times have changed. And of course they have changed, but as a reader, as an older reader who likes Young Justice, I kind of want the illusion that times haven't changed. And I know that's very selfish of me. I know, probably old-fashioned, and maybe there's all kinds of changes that I need to make as a man in his 50s. But again, I think I think she's tried to check off too many check boxes when she wrote this, and because of that, I give her A for really good efforts, because there's moments here that are laugh out loud funny, particularly in the first issue. But it just feels like the story just is. I don't think this is new reader friendly at all, to be quite honest. But then hearing your comments, maybe I'm wrong about that. So I hope I
Well,
am.
I'm just trying to, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to read it for what it is, and without the history of Young Justice, yeah, I just don't maybe get all the references. I take your point that they're not young anymore, but I mean, that's kind of the point I think that she's making, and you referenced it, the fact
Yeah.
that times have changed. But I wonder if she'd taken that tack, of them going on adventure and then looking back. I guess she could have still introduced Mickey. I'm gonna keep doing it. Mickey,
Yeah.
Mixius Pitalik. I mean, I guess she could have still introduced him, but I don't know. I mean, I think that there's still more of the story to be told. Like, what is his motivation? Why is he doing this? Um, and maybe have it. This was the way to structure it, to have it play out more like a Mixius Pitalik story, because those like stories starring him do tend to have a certain structure, certain formula that they follow. Which, that's not to say you can't go outside that formula. But yeah, jury's still out for me on this. I'm enjoying it. I'm kind of a little disappointed that somebody who's big Young Justice fan and has the history with it is not enjoying it as somebody that doesn't have that history with it. But like I said, I postulated that somebody that had the history, it would be richer for it. But it sounds like in your case, it makes it actually a worse story, less likely to be enjoyed. So I don't know, or maybe that's just like you said, the old man in you that's like,
Well,
get off
it's
my
just
lawn. I want the old Young Justice back.
well, I will say this: when they were young kids and they were arguing with each other, the arguments were funny and silly and funny. Whereas now, but now they're adults, and the dialogue just sounds like they're older adults, and it sounds more like pettiness to me, and disgruntled teenagers, and it just, I guess it just never hit the same. And and again, I'm in fairness, trying to recapture my youth again. I mean, that it's probably just as much on me as Megan Fitzpatrick. But and again, I do give her props because I'm a hard person to please. So.
Yeah, Megan Fitzmartin.
Miss
I always
Martin,
make
thank
that
you.
mistake. Yeah, I always make that mistake as well.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. Well, one more thing I will say is I still don't get the tie-in to Dark Crisis either. I don't,
Yeah.
unless we're gonna find that out. So we'll
Yeah.
see. All right. Up next, we have Deceased: War of the Undead Gods, written by Tom Taylor, pencils by Trevor Hairsine, inks by Andy Lanning, colors by Rain Barreto, letters by Seda Timofonte. So much like Young Justice, I still haven't gone back and read the whole Deceased. I think there are 3 or 4 different um, limited series before this one, and I know I'm missing out on some references and whatnot, but I think Tom Taylor is doing a great job of making this new reader friendly, because I am able to follow along and I absolutely love it. There are some brutal scenes here, as there have been throughout. Even though I haven't been reading the Deceased stuff, um, I'm aware of the brutal killings and whatnot. I'm not going to spoil everything, especially the last page. I'll let Rocky talk about that, because I don't want to take everything. But I'm going to mention that seeing Darkseid literally rip off Sinestro's head, I had surprisingly mixed feelings about that. Sinestro's kind of a jerk, always has been. So to see him get his comeuppance was, in a way, like, oh, Sinestro, you finally got. He's so arrogant. Sinestro is so arrogant that you just want someone to put him in his place. But I mean, here he's fighting for the side of the angels, and so for that reason, it's like, maybe it's not as, the payoff's not as great, but the scene is no less amazing or brutal, and Trevor Hairsine does a fantastic job. Seeing Supergirl as a bad guy is, I always have mixed feelings about that too, but it definitely works. She's definitely formidable. And then my favorite thing in the issue is Tom Taylor writing Guy Gardner when he confronts Brainiac, like, oh, Brainiac says something about meeting a 9th level intelligence, and he's like, oh, who came up with the levels? He's like, and Brainiac says, well, I did, and Guy Gardner's like, well, isn't that convenient?
Yeah.
How high does your scale go up to? 9? And then Brainiac talks about, well, theoretically 13, and Gardner's just like, and you're only a 9? Like, what are you talking about? I'm an 11 on the Guy Gardner scale, and it only goes up to 6. That's how good I am. Like, it's just the best Guy Gardner dialogue, and it's that little interaction sums up exactly who Guy Gardner is. He's such a bro, you know,
Yeah.
such a like frat boy, like, and that just sums it up perfectly. And I read that and I was literally laughing out loud, and all I could think was, man, I really want a Tom Taylor written Guy Gardner series. I don't know, or maybe a one shot, because that would be hard to maintain that throughout an entire series, but oh my god, it was so. And I won't spoil everything, because the follow up panel is just as funny. Him calling Brainiac an idiot, but God, I absolutely loved it. So again, I've said this before. It's just a matter of finding time. Reading this and seeing the amazingly visceral Trevor Hairsine art reminds me every time I read it that I haven't gone back and read the previous Deceased stuff, and that I need to.
Yeah,
And just to
you
keep up
do.
with the theme on, yeah, I really do. Just to keep up with the theme on covers, every one of these covers is fantastic. There is an homage to the X-Men covers for X-Men issue 1 that were a gatefold, that you could buy each. And of course, we all did. We bought all 5 of the covers so we could have them all. But then you bought the green one that was the gatefold to have them all together. So there's an homage to that. There's one that has this evil-looking Lobo on it, and then there's another one with I guess it's Wonder Girl.
Yeah, well, the new Wonder Woman, I guess. Well, she's
New
Wonder
Wonder
Woman.
Woman. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Is it Cassie though?
It is.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Cassie Sandsmark, yeah,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the Undead universe here or whatever, yeah.
Right.
Deceased.
And yeah, I mean, she just looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's clearly like digitally painted airbrush or what have you. Um, and yeah, it is just gorgeous. Sun Kamonaki is the artist on that one. And that might be my favorite one. So yeah, I just really, really love this. It was just so much fun. So what do you think?
Well, I my comment is for all those people that are upset with a particular writer with the first name of Tom being Tom King, the way that Tom King writes Guy Gardner in a particular series that you and I really love, but they don't like how Guy Gardner is portrayed in one series written by Tom King. Don't worry, Tom Taylor's coming along, and if you're a Guy Gardner fan, you're going to love the way Guy Gardner is portrayed here in Deceased War of the Undead Gods. He's a cocky, arrogant, take no prisoners type of soldier warrior that you would expect Guy Gardner to be. And I agree with you. The scene where he's having that dialogue with Brainiac, I mean, of all the people that you would think would lose a battle of wits with Brainiac, you would think Guy Gardner would be up there, but no, Guy Gardner makes Brainiac truly look like an idiot. And like you said, it just puts a shit-eating smile on your face. And so definitely props for that. But there's so much more in this issue. There's Big Barda being cured of the anti-life virus, and her and Mr. Miracle traveling to New Genesis looking for their son Jacob. Of course, New Genesis has been infected by the anti-life virus, by the possessed dark side, and Supergirl's been possessed by the anti-life. They attack the planet of Kuragar. The Sinestro Corps gets involved. Of course, that's Kuragar is Sinestro's home planet. And Saratu, his daughter, who is a Green Lantern, along with Kyle Rayner, they go and they try to help protect the planet of Kuragar. Of course, that doesn't work out very well. The fate of Sinestro here, I won't ruin it, but let's just say it's pretty epic. Sinestro is a kick-ass warrior, but so is Darkseid, possessed by the anti-life. And when I read this, I imagine Tom Taylor playing with his DC action figures, because when you sit back and you say out loud the plot of what happens in this issue, it's like I'm going to grab my action figures and say to myself, now imagine if you did this and this character did that, and that's what he's doing. And to Tom Taylor's credit, it's like an insane Injustice series, and Injustice is arguably arguably the best comic book of the decade of 2010s, and he's having so much fun here. And he knows these characters. He knows the DC universe. We've said this before. Tom Taylor knows what he's doing here, and this really, really works. I'm not going to ruin. I'm not going to ruin it for the people either. If you're not reading Deceased War of the Undead Gods, you're crazy. And, Jace, it's actually, your example is a perfect example how much you enjoyed this. And you don't even need to read the first series, but you want to read the first series after you've read this. Because you think, oh my God, how did they get to this point where they're essentially on a new Earth, and now the entire universe is in danger from this undead virus that is still around and they can't seem to escape. But this is a lot of fun. And Trevor Hairston's art. How many people when Trevor Hairston debuted with Deceased didn't like his art? They didn't like it. It was too choppy. The line work was choppy. It was unrefined. And now all of a sudden you can see an improvement in his line work and his art. And it's gotten better and better, but it fits the horror narrative / hint of hope that is ever present in every story arc. But this really works. Yeah. So this is definitely again this is tied for first with World's Finest for best of the week. There's a lot of fun with this one.
I That's interesting about your comment about Hairsign's art because I don't think it's improved. I don't think it's changed. So I've been a fan of Trevor for a long time. He did a lot of work for Valiant
Hmm.
before DMG bought them, and did a fantastic job. Exo Man of War, also
Book of
God,
the Dead. I remember reading. I think he did some
yeah,
Book of
Book
the
of the
Dead for
Dead.
Valiant.
And he did the other one about the Russian astronaut Eternity, that was fantastic as well. And yeah, there's always this grittiness to his style, and it really works for as long as you match him up with the right type of story. But he's definitely capable of cleaner line work. And if you look at those pages I was talking about with the interaction between Guy Gardner and Brainiac, the way he draws Brainiac is much cleaner than a lot of the other um, characters, especially women who they're like Barda in the beginning, and she's kind of disheveled and
Mm.
just can't come out of battle and gone to the planet where Jacob is supposed to be, and everything's gone and destroyed, and she's all distraught. And that those thin lines of hair, and it uses it to show emotion. Here's Brainiac, this living computer, and he draws him much cleaner because he's just a much cleaner character. So, yeah, I just think that that's just the way that his style is. So I do find it interesting. I think more than him improving, I think people have just gotten used to it, and they realize it really work. His style of art really works um, for the type of story Tom Taylor's trying to tell, the type of story that Deceased is. So, all right, let's move on. Excuse me. We have part 9 or issue number 9 of Batman the Knight, written by Chip Zdarsky, art and cover by Carmine Di Giandomenico, um, colors by Yvonne Placencia, letters by Pat Barroso. We're coming down to the end of this, and I just going to reiterate what I've said about the series from the beginning. I expect it to be big in scope, and based on it being only 10 issues, but supposedly wanting to cover all of Bruce's training, that it was going to be kind of this high level, almost like a Marvel saga type um, story where everything was real broad with a lot of third person narration. That hasn't been what this has been at all. It's been a very personal story of Bruce, focusing more on the relationship he had with his mentors as opposed to what he was actually doing in his training. So much more emotional than I expected, which I guess I should have known because it's Chip Zdarsky. Um, but I thought this was a great issue. The Dijon Domenico art, I kind of feel like we were just talking about with Trevor Hairsine. That's how I feel about Dijon Domenico. I've talked about it before. First time he worked at DC was on Flash with Joshua Williamson, and I feel like his art style suits Flash very well because it's very kind of loose and flowing. For other characters like Batman, I don't think it works as well, but as this series has gone on, it's sort of grown on me, and it's at least it's consistent. We've had the same artist on throughout, and it does evoke some emotion because it is a bit of a looser style. Makes things a little more visceral, if you will, especially with the color choices. So, what do you think about it?
Uh, I think the art remains. I think very consistent throughout this entire series, and it works. I'm accustomed to it, and I think it works. It works very well. It feels kinetic. It feels action packed. The uh, Carmen Diomonico, his our facial expressions are quite good as well, because that's very important here, because Bruce, the emotions and the emotional journey and the character arc that Bruce Wayne is on here is the emotional heart of this entire Batman the Knight series. And of course, his relationship with his mentors, as you said, is something that is definitely played out behind the scenes. How he took both the best, he learned from the best masters there are, but he also learned from their flaws as well. And in this particular issue, he finally meets up with Ra's al Ghul. When he battled Harris Zuma, the Still last issue, the Still sort of extended to Bruce Wayne after being defeated by him, extended to him an invitation by Ra's al Ghul. Of course, Anton and Bruce have to look for Ra's al Ghul, and they spend the first quarter of this issue doing precisely that, traveling in the Sahara Desert outside of Dubai, looking for the I guess this majestic city of Lazarus. And what I find interesting here, what Chip Sardasky is doing is he's sort of I believe he's adding to the lore, and dare I say evolving or perhaps even changing some of the mythology of Ra's al Ghul a little bit. I don't know if there were, he's giving Ra's al Ghul a city called Lazarus. He's maybe changing up a little bit of the Ra's al Ghul's past. and it he does a really good job here because I could see how one could be extremely attracted to this powerful person named Ra's al Ghul, with this beautiful daughter Talia, who at first is I kind of laughed at one point. Talia refers to Bruce and excuse me, refers to Bruce and Anton as basically backpackers, trying to find themselves, because that's really what they are. They're two wandering guys roaming the earth trying to find different masters. And, there's almost an element of absurdity to what Bruce Wayne and Anton are doing. And so Talia sort of mocks them a bit. But it becomes quite clear as they're being trained that, Bruce Wayne sees through Roz a little bit. He's gained enough instincts through his training that he suspects that Roz is not everything that he is purporting himself to be, and I think it works quite well. The idea that Ra's al Ghul has a master plan of creating Lazarus cities, self-sustaining environments, transforming how people live and consume the planet. This is very much embracing the idea of, that's kind of what we want now to embracing climate change. We want our cities to become exactly like Ra's al Ghul dreamed they would be in the early years of when Bruce Wayne first met him. So I find that kind of interesting too, that Ra's al Ghul here, his so-called master plan, he does seem to have a noble goal, but yet as Bruce Wayne asks, why is a guy who wants to save the world surround himself with assassins and train them? Something is amiss here. And, again, for those of us who know Ra's al Ghul, we see a lot of very familiar tropes in this story, but it feels refreshing. I won't say it feels totally new, but it feels refreshing. It's got a new sort of flavor to it. I like what Chip Zdarsky's bringing to it, and yeah, I'm really curious to see where this is going because with Dawn of the DCU on our real world horizon here, I wonder how much of this is going to be. Rumor has it that they might start fresh in January, maybe renumber Batman or some revitalize or refresh the DC universe and their characters moving forward. I think it's fair to say that what Sardaski is bringing here, particularly what he's bringing some vibrancy with the Batman of Zur-Anar, with Failsafe in the pages of Batman, what he's doing here. It, and just like what he's doing in Daredevil, this feels like he's building something, and I really, really like that. And again, I'll draw another example to what Mark Waid's doing with World's Finest. You tell a story in the past, and you build on it in the present stories. That's what Chip Zdarsky's doing here as well. And I don't think it's any surprise that World's Finest is critically appraised, critically acclaimed, and Batman Knight is getting some fairly decent press as well. So I enjoyed this. What do you think? Oh, you're on mute. Mute.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Zardarsky is going to pay off some of the things that are in this series in his Batman run, then more power to him. Like I said, this is an emotional and a very personal story of Bruce, which I enjoy. I love that he brought Ghostmaker in. Clearly, he paid attention to what James Tynion was doing, so I appreciate that. It is kind of hard to see how he's going to wrap it up in only one more issue. But he's paying homage to, even though this is a little bit of a retcon, he is respecting and honoring what came before in terms of, yes, of course it's Ra's al Ghul, the last person that trains Bruce. Of course, there's a conflict between him and Anton because we know that Ghostmaker and Bruce had this agreement. That's why we had never saw him before, right? If Bruce was in one place, the agreement was that Ghostmaker would not be there. And then it's kind of inherent in his name, Ghostmaker, that he's in the shadows, he's behind the scenes. That's how DC has structured it, so it explains why we haven't seen him before. So again, I think this works on a lot of levels. I do sort of wonder what it would look like with some more traditional DC, almost house style art, but that's not to say Dijon Domenico hasn't done a good job, because he has. All right, up next, one that I did not read because we've talked about it at length. I've never read any of the Fable stuff, but we're up to issue number 155, which is chapter 5 of Unboxing Day. Bill Willingham, writer-creator, Mark Buckingham, penciler, Steve Lealoha on inks, Lee Luffridge on colors, with Todd Klein doing the letters. What do you think?
Well, I'll give a quick summary here, because those of us who love Fables, I think, are going to be enjoying this. This is part 5 of 12 of the Black Forest. In a nutshell, the world is now aware that Fables exist, and Cinderella has returned from the dead. From the original 150 issue run, she was killed by Kinder Totten, who was Wicked Witch. She's now back from the dead, and she's helping. And this issue, it's established she's going to be coordinating her efforts with the White House to help them build defenses against potential magical fable creatures. In the meantime, we got another story of Snow White and Big B, the big bad wolf. Their 7 children, which are all wolves of the great wind. They're very powerful. They've gone. Their father, Big B, told them to go on a big adventure, and they took him literally. And so they're literally going on these massive adventures. And what's playing out is that these adventures seem to be quite quite funny. Connor Wolf comes across a prince of last resort, and who kills monsters and sort of kills people who don't seem to be doing anything wrong. So he's a mysterious character, this Kit Hellconnor, this prince of last resort. Then there's Blossom Wolf, who sort of like looks a lot like her aunt, the Red Rose, Snow White's sister. She's stumbled upon. She's stumbled upon this Hern, the son of Hern, and these creatures that she's accidentally released from being caged. And something is amiss here. Meanwhile, we got Peter Pan, who has defeated the great adversary, who was the big bad guy in the first Fables run. And Peter Pan with with his little fairy tale with what do you call it? Peter Pan and Tinkerbell. They got some machinations. They're trying to find all the magic that the adversary, uh, who was Geppetto of Pinocchio lore, he hid some magic, and they're looking for that. And all in this Black Forest story arc. We're only in part 5 of 12. There's a lot of things. We have a lot of questions. If you're following Fables, you'll enjoy it. I said before, it's not exactly new reader friendly, but there is some. The dialogue's always good by Bill Willingham, and if you're a Fables fan, you definitely want to check it out. With, of course, fantastic art by Mark Buckingham. So yeah, I would. I'm always I'm always good for a good Fable story.
Yep, fantastic. All right, up next we have Black Adam #4. This is written by Christopher Priest. Rafa Sandoval handles the art. Matt Herms on colors. Willie Schubert on letters. This one's called Theogony. If you're not familiar, it's a poem, classic poem about the genetics and heritage of the gods in a lot of ways. So think about like the gods family tree. And that's sort of what the term has come to mean. And we certainly see a lot of those elder gods here. Anu, Asher, Belet, Ninaruda, Marduk, Enki, Nergal. So there's the story that's going on in present day where Black Adam has been resurrected. The disease that supposedly was infecting him, it looks like it's been passed on to his descendant, who is a doctor and is, well, he's not a doctor yet. He's interning, I suppose you'd say, at a hospital. But we see when he uses his powers later on in the issue that it appears that the infection has spread to him. So there's a lot of moving parts here, which is very typical of a Christopher Priest story. And how things will make sense is not always apparent until you get to the end. Because again, we do have this story that we keep flashing back to about the way Black Adam interacted with these gods, the Akkad, and he wasn't, he was still referred to as Tet Adam back then, and they're the ones apparently who christened him Black Adam because they don't like the way that he's used his powers. They don't like the choices that he's making. They're saying that he's turned evil. So clearly something going on in the past that's going to pay off in the future timeline or the present timeline that could explain maybe where he got the disease. And then as far as his descendant, what exactly is going to happen with that, I don't know. It almost feels like I don't want to say a completely separate story because, clearly it's not, because he is, a descendant, and he gave Black Adam gave him his ring, but it's hard to see how exactly they tie in together. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on, other than there's plenty of action despite this. Based on how I sort of summed it up, you would think it's more of a talking head sort of story, but there's plenty of action here with the demon showing up at some point. What he wants with this descendant of Black Adam, we don't know. Sargon the Sorcerer shows up on the last page. Like, there's just a lot of moving parts here, and it's hard to know what exactly or what direction Christopher Priest is going in. I will say one of the other things that I noticed, the art is solid from Rafa Sandoval, but we've talked before about how it's not quite the really clean style that he's used on other things in the past, especially Green Lantern. But that's okay. A little more visceral style, something that's a little sketchier, kind of adds to the mood because this does feel like a dark story. Um, and I think again that really suits what's going on here. But the other thing that I noticed is typically in a Christopher Priest book, sometimes it's a full page, sometimes it's a quarter of a page on a panel. We get very few of those black panels with the white lettering to kind of tell us where we are in the story, what's going on, name the chapters, whatever. It's very much a Christopher Priest thing to do. He started doing it when he was writing Black Panther during Marvel Knights. But I think the story, even though it's 12 issues, 12 issue limited series, I think the story's so big he can't really afford to waste panels, honestly. We do get them as insets, and we do get them as panels once in a while. But it's just something I noticed because this does feel relatively fast paced, but it also feels like a big story. And keep in mind, we're only a third of the way through here. This is only issue 4. So we have 8 issues to go. I'm very curious to see where it goes. I thought the art was fantastic. The characters are interesting. This characterization of Black Adam is different. There's not the arrogant self-assuredness that you see so often with Black Adam. You can see he's sort of questioning himself. He's sort of questioning what's going on. Maybe it's the fact that he just kind of faced his own morality, was at death's door. But I really like what Christopher Priest is doing here. And I wonder how much, my guess is going to be none. But I wonder how much the characterization of Black Adam in the upcoming movie played into this. But I doubt Christopher Priest got a chance to even see it. You know, those upper decision makers at Warner Brothers aren't thinking. They probably just send hey, put a Black Adam comic out around the same time that the movie's going to be out. They don't think, hey, we should give the writer a screening or, you know, some kind of a preview copy of the film, and they're not thinking of that at all, most likely. So, but it is interesting because this feels like a little bit more of a human Black Adam as opposed to even the recent one that we've seen in the Justice League, even though supposedly he was on the side of angels trying to fight against some reality and future state event that was supposed to come to pass, which never really made sense, but we'll leave that alone with the whole Rock of Eternity and what have you. Even that felt a little bit like a mustache twirling villain, and that's how Black Adam has sort of always come across, just because of his arrogance. What Christopher Priest is doing to him here is making him feel much more human, much more relatable, much more fallible. So I think it works on a lot of levels. What do you think, Rock?
Uh, yeah, I was. Well, my one criticism is that this story is not being told. I wish it was more. There was more clarity here because this is. I feel this is told in a very confusing manner. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, you said it very obviously, and we all know this. This is how Christopher Priest tells a story, and and I get that. Having said that, that doesn't mean that it's it doesn't mean that it gets any better if he use his same style. He uses the same style again and again, and where it doesn't, where I feel it doesn't work quite as well in this issue is he really tells some. He's really changing up the origin of Black Adam here in a way that I think is kind of interesting and significant. We all know that this is the New 52 origin of Black Adam. He establishes here and reminds people that Black Adam got his powers from both, 5,000 years ago in Egypt. Him and another person by the name of Akeem, his cousin, jointly acquired the powers of Black Adam. Teth Adam, he killed Akeem. He killed his cousin to get the powers for himself. And the wizard banished him out into space. And this tells the story that while Black Adam is in space, apparently, while he flew by a comet and he inhaled space dust where these Egyptian gods were resting, the Akkad or the Akkad. And you named all those Egyptian gods. And these Egyptian gods indirectly gave him this plague, which would have killed him, but for the fact that this Malik character, his descendant, saved his life by shooting him with lightning. And so it was the power of Shazam that ironically saved Black Adam again. But at the same time, he's now sharing powers with Malik, who is White Adam. So we literally have a black and white Adam. And so that's kind of cool. It's very clear here that these new Egyptian gods, they give a warning to Black Adam, these new Egyptian gods. They say that we're coming to Earth. Warn the Earth, we're coming. Okay, so these gods are coming. What's the big deal? Well, okay, so now Black Adam seems to have his own, I guess, self-described pantheon of gods. Shazam has his own. Wonder Woman has his own. So so Christopher Priest is expanding on that mythology here. There's definitely a lot of room for a fascinating and interesting story here, and he's got my attention. Um, Thinking outside the box a little bit, I do wish that for new readers, I have to say this is DC was, I heard that Christopher Priest didn't even want to do a Black Adam series. They actually begged him to. He actually said that in an interview that he didn't even want the series. They had to ask him to. When you're asking a writer to write a series that they tell you they don't want to write, come on. And when you have a movie coming out called Black Adam with the number one box office star in the decade, and you have a comic book like this, which even if the story's good and this story has potential, it's got nothing to do with the movie. Uh, and that's I just think that's a little bit of a miss. I'll happily eat my words if this story ends up being amazing. And there's always two different worlds to a comic book character. There's the comic book stories, and then there's the movies. And often they can be very different. That's fine. It's just that it's just very odd given where Warner Brothers and DC is at right now that they would choose. This is a very, very different take. And this movie is not going to have this. This is not movie related at all. And Christopher Priest has said that as well. So, but full props. I don't mind the story. It's interesting. I mean, I didn't mind the New 52 origin, and this is definitely adding to the mythology of Black Adam and his pantheon of gods. Where's it going to go? I have no idea, but we got 6 issues left. So there's a lot of story that can happen over the next 6 months, which it's interesting that this story will end after the movie has come out, I think. And then this is gonna end post dawn of a new DCU, so it's going to be interesting to see, is this Malik character? I imagine we're probably going to see him in the new DC universe once we get post Dark Crisis. So we'll see.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. Like when Christopher Priest, he was on the show a while back, and he told me after we stopped recording that he had this coming. I was really excited for it. But the more that I thought about it, because this is the way, I mean, I love the way that Christopher Priest tells stories, but you kind of need to know how to read comics, in order to
Yeah,
make and kind of power through.
that's a good way of
Stuff,
putting it. Yeah,
yeah, because stuff pays off so much later. And then you go back and you have a chance to reread it, knowing what's coming, and it makes more sense. His Deathstroke, I struggled with his Deathstroke series when DC Rebirth, that initiative started, because I felt so lost all the time. So if you're looking for a writer who's going to write something that's new reader friendly, you are not looking for Christopher Priest. And he didn't mention to me about him not really wanting to do it. So yeah, I kind of echo Rocky's sentiment. Like if you want it to be new reader friendly for people that are going to see the movie, this is not that. And if you want to get the best out of somebody, you want to give them a project that they're interested in. So interesting choice. I will say that the Justice Society one shot files, whatever, those are a much more simplistic approach to these characters, and those are very new reader friendly. So yes. I guess if you're a comic retailer, point people in that direction as opposed to this. So anyway, let's move on. We have the next in the series of the Batman One Bad Day one shots. It's Batman One Bad Day Two-Face, written by Mariko Tamaki. Javier Fernandez does the art, Jordi Belair on colors, Ariana Mayer on letters. Again, great covers. Stanley Artgerm has a 1 in 25 where Two-Face, he almost looks like Metamorpho the way his different faces are. He has almost more than 2. The Christian Ward one is very beautiful, especially pinks and purplish colors that you expect from Christian Ward. There's even a Brian Boland cover. There's a Jim Lee cover. So, yeah, some great covers here. But what do you think of the covers? What do you think of the book?
Well, Brian Boland is one of my favorite cover artists, so I got to go with the Brian Boland cover, definitely. And
I thought maybe you would like the Jim Lee one because it's cast as just beat the crap out of Two-Face.
Yeah, it's that's a cover. That's right. Yeah, I don't mind that. That's actually I never even thought of it like that. But yeah, I don't. I guess. Yeah, it looks good. I like it for Cassandra Cain. But Boland, I got a huge Brian Boland collection. I got like multiple copies of his covers, so I'd have to go with Brian Boland. But that's a nice cover too. But as for the story proper, you and I both loved the Tom King One Bad Day for Riddler. I know, and it was a very controversial story. A lot of people didn't like it, online. It was sort of a divisive storyline, but I enjoyed it. You loved it, and and the idea that one of my friends, colleagues on Weird Science made the comment that that maybe Marika Tamaki in this One Bad Day for Two-Face, maybe she forgot what her homework assignment was, to use his words. And I think that I sometimes I wonder that as well, because when I think of One Bad Day, I think of, well, this is I kind of thought that this was going to be taking Batman's villains one at a time and saying, portraying them at their worst. Tell us something really bad. It's one bad day, something really egregiously horrible that this one villain has done. And because the Riddler definitely got that. And I think I have a sneaking suspicion Tom King's right out of the gate was probably going to be my favorite and maybe your favorite as well. But this Two-Face story I thought was very kind of derivative. Now, what Two-Face does in this story ultimately is that Mayor Nagano asks him to be a new DA, the new district attorney of Gotham. So now Marika Tamaki just came off writing the Arkham Tower run, where it was quite clearly established that Mayor Nagano probably never wants to try to rehabilitate or fund the rehabilitation of Batman's Rogues Gallery ever again, because that ended in disaster. And now all of a sudden, Mayor Nagano is asking Two-Face, Harvey Dent, to be the district attorney again, but keep him on a really short leash. So right away, it lacked any verisimilitude for me. And it bothered me a bit because Marika Tamaki, you're forgetting your own storyline. It doesn't make sense even given the storyline that you just wrote. Mayor Nagano's own wife was almost killed because of his vain attempt at agreeing to some type of reconciliation for the villains. And here he's offering a job to Harvey Dent, a known psychotic with dual personalities. Come on. So that didn't sit well with me, but I can let that go because I'm thinking, okay, all right, Tamaki, now, tell me something about Two-Face that I don't know. And I just thought it was underwhelming. And at the end of the day here, he becomes DA. He's got to prove himself. So Harvey Dent, he does all the things he's supposed to do. He talks with Batman. He says, I'm turning a new leaf. He's talking to Mayor Nagano. He's putting things in play. And out of the blue, and this is new for me, to my knowledge, I've never read a Two-Face story. Is this not the first story where Harvey Dent, where we meet Harvey Dent's father? I've never read a story where I met Harvey Dent's father before. Well, we meet Harvey Dent's father. So right away, I'm thinking to myself, okay, here we go, off to the races. How screwed up was Harvey Dent's father? Is it going to be something bad and what have you? And there was just no surprises here. Harvey Dent's father seems to be a nice guy, but he's all about legacy. He's all about legacy. And Harvey Dent's father is turning 88 years old. He's quitting his job and they're throwing a party for him because I think he works for the city. And so his father believes in legacy, and his father, maybe you could understandably so, his father was probably a little bit upset when his son Harvey Dent became Two-Face. Can you blame him? And so Harvey Dent goes on this big thing to organize this big party for his father. And, I keep, and throughout all of this, there's no character work done. We don't get any flashback sequences showing the relationship between Harvey and his father. All we get multiple conversations between spoiler, like Stephanie Brown, Cassandra Cain makes an appearance, and there's more conversations between Batman and all these other characters talking about Harvey Dent. We learn nothing about Harvey Dent other than the fact that he's arranging a birthday party for his dad. And then at the end, in a ridiculously predictable fashion, I called every plot point as I read it. It was so predictable that literally Harvey Dent's taken over the security of his father's birthday party. 200 people are invited. Right away, the first thing I thought of was, well, if Harvey Dent's taken over the security of his father's birthday party, he's probably going to attack his father's birthday party. And that's exactly what happened. I literally could write this myself, and predictable, cliche, and lo and behold, Harvey Dent has issues with his daddy. He's got daddy issues. What are the daddy issues? I guess he was upset that his dad was upset that he became Two-Face. I thought it was surprisingly one-dimensional. I thought it was we didn't learn nothing new. There was none of the characters. We learned nothing new about Two-Face. We learned nothing new about anybody. I was stunned at there was no chances being made here. And when I compare this to Tom King, you know, people might criticize Tom King's Riddler story, One Bad Day, for maybe, okay, Riddler wouldn't do this, who's out of character. I don't care. He took chances. He went out. I thought it was a fantastic story, and he went out on a limb and he made Riddler badass, kick ass, and he redefined Riddler's capacity for darkness in a way that I don't think will be uh, bettered for quite some time. This is really by the numbers, and again, the art here is good. I don't want to take away from the art and everything else. The Javier Fernandez art was really good. Jordi Blair and the colors. This was really good. And as we said, we talked about the covers. Everything was good. I just thought the story left so much to be desired. There were so many pages wasted, I think, on action sequences and Batman getting from point A to point B, as opposed to telling the story of Harvey Dent. How is this one bad day for Harvey? Other than it was a bad day for Harvey's dad's at his birthday party, I'll grant you that. But I just thought it was a missed opportunity, and I think the shock ending regarding the fate of his father, it didn't hit for me. But do you feel any different?
No, I don't. And when I talked to Tom King about this, and he was talking about being approached to do the Riddler story, he talked about the fact like DC, they talked about Killing Joke as kind of the template, right? What Killing Joke is for the Joker is what these books need to be for their particular villain. So you're right in saying, take a Batman villain and think about like the worst of them, the worst they can be, magnify it out so that they act out or they have a plan or they do whatever, and it makes for one really bad day in terms of that villain doing a really bad or horrible thing. It makes it, there's multiple meanings. It makes it a really bad day for Batman. Batman comes home at the end of that day dealing with the worst version of the Riddler ever. Alfred says, "How was your day?" "Oh man, I had one bad day. It sure was a terrible day." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so when you talk about doing that for Two-Face, there's so many different directions you could have gone. Um, and I feel like Tamaki just scratches the surface. Everything is surface level here. So this didn't feel like anything special in terms of a Two-Face story. I like the idea that it introduced his dad. Um, in my mind, if you want to go down that route, like why, just like we did with the Riddler, and that's not to say that this would have been the same story and it would have been Tamaki copying what Tom and Mitch did, but that's at least an interesting angle, right? Take this, same central idea of Harvey having daddy issues and give us an issue narrated by Harvey explaining why he is the way he is. Just like we finally got a chance to see why the Riddler is the way he is. Like, why is he obsessed with riddles? Why does he abandon the riddles in the end and just become like the most ruthless villain maybe ever that Batman's ever gone up against?
Yep.
It all made sense. It was scary. It was a menacing, formidable foe for Batman, even to the point, and again, it's a ambiguous ending, and I'm going to spoil it if you haven't read it, but yeah, he appears to kill the Riddler. All those stories or all those questions so many times, like, why doesn't Batman just kill the Joker once and for all? Like, if you really want to save lives, it's the whole idea of, the train is barreling down the track and there's one person tied to the tracks. But if you divert it, it crashes into, 100 people. What do? Yeah, you kind of got to let it run over the one guy to save the 100 guys, right?
Mhm.
It's that same idea. You kill Joker, yes, you take one life, but you save hundreds, if not thousands of others. So it makes a lot of sense to do that. It was cool to see Tom and Mitch elevate the Riddler to that point that even Batman was willing to do that. So you kind of hope for the same with Two-Face, or if not that, because again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same thing, but give us a story where at the end of it, I know something new about Two-Face. The only thing I know new about Two-Face here is that he has a dad, and he
Yeah.
had some issues with him. But so what? Because I don't really know why. It's hinted at. Oh, his dad was strict. His dad was stubborn. Okay, like it's not enough, and that's what I feel when I read this. It feels a little bit like a wasted opportunity.
Well, not only
Um,
that, like remember that, Harvey Dent was the youngest district attorney in Gotham City history. He was smart, he is intelligent, he was good at what he did. I don't know if you can you become that if you're terribly abused by your father? I mean, I need an explanation as why does he hate his father so much, other than this ridiculous legacy explanation that I didn't buy for a second. I just felt like it was such a missed opportunity here. When you compare this to the development of the background of the Riddler of Edward Nygma in Tom King's One Bad Day, this is like night and day in terms of character work. That's what I found so disappointing. The lack of character work here and the background explanation was just stunning to me.
Yeah, and didn't even make sense. Like, it's mentioned that right before the party, Harvey attempted to erase the DUIs that
His new
his
mother-in-law would
father's
have.
new wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, why? What? Why? There's
Yeah.
no explanation for, like, what?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
it did
this was just some wasted potential.
like a wedding gift for him for his dad's or something like that, or a what?
Well,
I don't.
trying to be a
I
retirement gift, a birthday gift. I don't know.
it's
It
just
doesn't make any sense if he was going to kill his dad anyway. Why would he be? Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I'm a bit lost. It didn't really. Yeah, it just didn't work for me. Um, it's not a bad story, but it's to me it doesn't live up to what we've had before. And granted, that might be too high of a bar because Tom and Mitch really made something, one of the best comics I've read in the last decade. So, not everything is going to be that. And I don't expect it to be that, but it didn't make sense. It wasn't additive to Two-Face. So Two-Face has a dad. That's what we learned. Yeah, not particularly interesting. So, anyway, let's move on to the next book. It's Nightwing number 96, written by Tom Taylor. We have art by Bruno Redondo, Caio Felipe on inks, Adriana Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. Oh my God, is this a gorgeous book to look at? The blues and the pinks and the purples just really, really work. It's such an interesting look that Bruno Redondo has and sort of specific look that Bruno Redondo has given to this book, and it really works because so often in the past, Nightwing has been a dark book. He's Batman's first mentee, Batman's first disciple, if you will, and so. Why wouldn't it be a dark book? He operates at night, and they've gone the other way and made it really bright. So I do enjoy that. Now we did see at the end of last issue, bit of a shocker that Blockbuster learned of Dick Grayson's secret identity. Might not be a problem with the way this issue ends. I'll let Rocky talk about that. But it does bring up an interesting scene with Dick and Barbara that I really loved, where Dick's like, "Oh, we can't be together anymore because Blockbuster knows my secret identity and you'll never be safe," and blah, blah. And Barbara's like, "We're heroes. We're never going to be safe. Darkseid could attack the planet tomorrow. Kite Man could fall out of the sky at the wrong time. Triton could step on me." Like, I love that Barbara just immediately like, "Listen, dumbass, life's too short. We're going to be together, and take it or leave it." Despite everything that's going on, they're happy. So that was I really enjoyed that. That was a great character moment in an issue that's filled with them, and it starts off with a great action scene with Nightwing and Blockbuster fighting, and it's great to see Nightwing kick the crap out of Blockbuster because he's another one of those arrogant villains that kind of like Kingpin. He's relentless. He keeps coming back, much like the Kingpin, and at some point you just kind of get tired of him, get tired of all the bluster, and get tired of all the talk, and just want to see him go away at least for a while. Because he does seem to be Nightwing's nemesis and, runs Bloodhaven and what have you. But in a way that comes back to bite him when the way that Batwoman and Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, get all of the henchmen that work for Bloodhaven to kind of abandon him is to say, "Hey, that prison that you guys all go to in Bloodhaven, that private prison, worst prison you've ever been to, tortured, no sunlight, barely any food. Yeah, you know who owns that prison and runs it? Blockbuster." So I thought that was a really, and a total Blockbuster thing to do, right? Of course,
Yeah.
he's making money off the own crime that he creates. And so, yeah, there was just moment after moment, including the electrocutioner telling Blockbuster once he finds out what he thinks about him. It's a big FU and good luck finding any henchmen in the future. So by the end of the issue, Blockbuster's sort of depowered or has less power than he's ever had in a long time. And then he's confronted by Heartless in a fantastic scene as well. So I really enjoyed the issue. Um, we have both talked in the past about how the story has sort of been plodding along at times, going kind of slow. Um, but we've gotten a lot of events happening, and it's interesting because we've said the same thing about Tom Taylor's Superman Son of Kal-El book, and the action and pacing feels like it's picked up in that recently. And we certainly have had a couple of back-to-back action-packed Nightwing issues. Curious where it goes from here. Um, yeah. So what did you think of this?
Well, one thing that's really great here, in typical Tom Taylor fashion, a lot of great character work, and with this issue ends for Nightwing and Barbara Gordon kissing, just like in Superman Son of Kal-El, you have John Kent and Jay Nakamura kissing. So happy ending all around. And one minor criticism, and maybe it's not much of a criticism. I thought Henry Bendix, the villain Henry Bendix, that I kept wrongly calling John Bendix. I apologize last week. In any event, Henry Bendix, the villain in Superman Son of Kal-El, I thought that he was given short thrift. I thought maybe he was too easily disposed of. I do think Blockbuster is too easily disposed of here. I called last issue, I didn't think Blockbuster would be foolish enough to try to kill Nightwing in this issue. I thought that Blockbuster is brilliant in his own right, but it looks as if, maybe to Tom Taylor's credit, maybe he's getting rid of the old guard. He's getting rid of the Henry Bendix, and he's getting rid of Blockbuster, and instead we're getting other new villains to come up to make a name for themselves. And in this case, Heartbeat, literally ripping out the heart of Blockbuster to use for himself at some later date. That's pretty cool. Obviously this Heartbeat, he wants to become a villain in his own right, and so it's going to be interesting to see what he does. It's funny. The poster that's going around online about Dawn of the DCU, the solicits for December, Dawn of the DCU, it shows Nightwing behind the letterhead of Dawn of the DCU, and you can really get a sense of that. And just as the new DCU is dawning, we're probably going to be getting a wedding between Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. That's the rumor. Everybody's sort of kind of talking about it, wondering if it's going to happen. And I can't think of a better couple for the DC that represents the hope of the DCU than Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson. You hit the nail on the head, Chase, in this scene here where Barbara Gordon is sort of like metaphorically giving Dick Grayson a bitch slap, saying, "Hey, what's this? Too dangerous to be together. I love you. You love me. We're superheroes. This is what we do." And it's a great scene. It's a good scene. You know what? Maybe this is one of those moments, and I keep constructively criticizing Tom Taylor, and then I turn around and say, you know what? I'm going to let that go, because this is every comic book is a feel-good comic, and we just don't get enough of them. And so, Tom Taylor does it again. I'm here. I'm trying to nitpick, but at the end of the day, I got a smile on my face when I finished reading this comic. And by the way, I love the Brady Bunch cover. I had fun with it on the thumbnails for those watching or listening on the podcast. It's a beautiful sort of Brady Bunch kind of cover, showing all the characters that have been in the Bat family in a Brady Bunch kind of whatever 9-panel grid, and it just all around, it says so much, because the Brady Bunch symbol on the cover is sort of like, because this is all about family. Nightwing is creating his own family. And what this issue establishes is now Bloodhaven, the city of Bloodhaven itself, is a member, is its own, is getting a life of its own, just like Gotham City is, with the Haven, and with, he's part of this city now, and he's the billionaire philanthropist. And one has to wonder, now that Alfred is back, if Alfred is really back, will Alfred want his $1 billion back from Dick Grayson? But that's another issue.
Yeah, there was some controversy about this covers. People were mad that Signal wasn't on there. Luke Thomas. I don't know if you heard that when this first got posted. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And Tom Taylor was saying, all the people that appear on this Brady Bunch style cover are people that have appeared in the Nightwing book, and Signal has not yet appeared, but people still pushed back and argued with him about that. Yeah. That he was racist and anti-diversity or whatever. I'm like, do you know who you're talking to here?
Yeah,
you're talking really? To Tom Taylor. That's like the exact opposite of. But anyway, All right, up next we have Duo. Again, I'm not sure why this seems to happen with the Duo previews that we get. I'm not sure why, but we don't have a credits page. We know it's written by Greg Pak. We know Koi Pham does the pencils. Scott Hanna on inks. Chris Sotomayor, I believe, does the colors. Not sure who does the letters, unfortunately. Um, we get a bit of a flashback here, back to before the two main characters were infected with David was infected with nanites, and Kelly, her body was destroyed, her consciousness now sharing that same body that's infected with nanites. So we get a flashback to them working on those nanites and kind of seeing what their plans were for a better world, as it were, and that gives us sort of context to what happens later in the issue. So at the end of last issue, they were fighting. Kelly had control of David's body, and they were attacked by Dr. Tinker, his Tinker Technologies, by all these androids because he wants the nanite technology to take over the world, and supposedly for one of these who, I'm going to take over the world and I'm going to rule everything because I'm the smartest and I'm going to make everything better and there won't be any disease and hunger and that sort of thing. And Kelly takes over because David is a little more of the squeamish of the two, a little more of he's less assertive than Kelly is. Kelly takes over the body, sends the nanites out, takes over the robot army, and then says, no, we'll use our powers, we'll do everything, we know best. David's trying to talk her down, saying we can't do this, we can't save everybody, but Kelly doesn't want to hear it. And she goes out, and again, this is where this opening scene with them talking about their dreams of what they can do with the nanites plays out, because we see Kelly in control of David's body with the nanites, goes out among the homeless and the sick and starts healing people, almost like a modern day Jesus Christ. Messiah has returned, and she's healing people, whether it's a toothache or hives or sore foot or whatever. There does come to a point where a woman comes up with cancer, and David is trying to do the whole "I told you so" to Kelly, because they don't have enough experience, both with their powers and just in terms of like, what is cancer, how would you fix it, that sort of thing. But Kelly does tell the woman, we're not going to forget about you. The world's going to be a better place, blah, blah, blah. Well, Tinker, he's not to be denied his power, right? So he goes to the Immutables, who are these immortals who at one point thought that that David and Kelly, what they were doing, might create more immortals or more people who might rival them. And they have told us, the reason they don't make more Immutables, or they kind of keep to themselves, is because, and they're worried about what David and Kelly have planned, but you don't want too many people that are immortal. Then you run out of resources even faster if nobody's dying, right? People are still born, everybody lives forever, finite resources, the math just doesn't work. So David, or Tinker rather, Dr. Tinker, following the whole adage of, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, goes to the Immutables and convinces them, hey, come help me take down David and Kelly. But then as soon as he does, as soon as the Immutables help Dr. Tinker turns on them. And the Immutables, at least some of them, say to their leader, hey, we told you that this guy wasn't to be trusted. We knew he would do this. And it's just a very interesting dynamic, because Greg Pak is coming up with some really interesting ideas. The interpersonal politics between David and Kelly are interesting. The politics between what they want, socially, this utopia kind of thing, that those politics versus the politics of the Immutables versus the politics of Dr. Tinker, they're all like, none of them sees themselves as the bad guy. And from a certain perspective, none of them is the bad guy. They all have a point with what they want and what they're trying to do. It just makes for a really interesting dynamic, right? They all sort of want the same end goal, a better Earth, and end people suffering and things like that. But they all think about trying to get there in different ways. And that's just a book that really provides a lot of interesting perspectives. And so I'm really impressed with this. I'm really enjoying it. The Koi Pham art, he's a talented artist. He's a good storyteller. The only nitpick I have about the art is he doesn't really experiment with breaking outside of any of the panel borders ever. And it's typically just like widescreen, full-length panels that go across the whole page. There's not really any interesting panel layouts or dynamic panel layouts. It's a little bit paint by the numbers. Not to say that it gets boring, but it might read as a little more dynamic story, especially with these powers David has going up against these immutables, which are interesting and kind of colorful characters, just in terms of their different visual looks. It would be kind of interesting to see him experiment a little bit more. But again, it's a minor nitpick because his visual storytelling is really, really strong. So, what do you think?
Uh, you hit the nail on the head for me when you talked about how there's almost no bad guy here. There kind of is. It's probably Dr. Tinker. He's the most aggressive, and he's probably the most power hungry out of all of them. But the idea of the limits of healing and godhood, and to what extent should David and Kelly use their power to heal, and even in the midst of while they're healing a lot of the homeless people who have various ailments, they realize the limits of their power because they're not sure exactly what the full consequences of them using their power are. The Kelly comes across one person she's a little bit worried she can't quite cure her of cancer, but she promises that they will. They right away they realize that even if you have all the power of healing in the world, there's a lot more people than there are than just there's a lot of people on the planet, and everyone in their own way is in need of some kind of healing. And there's really no such thing as a Duke Ek Machina that can do it all. And then we have this struggle here where even the immutables, these immortal beings that they're worried about David and Kelly because they don't want the David and Kelly to abuse their power, and they're very careful as immortals themselves not to sort of stay behind the scenes and to sort of protect humanity. And David and Kelly, if they're going to be utilizing all the power, maybe they should. Maybe the immutables should be more pronounced in their own abilities and more helpful. So it's the philosophical questions that you pose yourself as the reader. And whose side would you be on? Would you side with Marius, the leader of the immutables? Would you be more like Kelly? I love the fact that Kelly is so much more aggressive than David. David wants to negotiate. Kelly's a little bit more aggressive, more willing to maybe kick a little ass and directly engage in the healing. And then Dr. Tinker is just more of the military man, willing to go that extra mile, willing to kill in order to achieve the greater good, and also is also just plain greedy. So all the different dichotomies here. Greg Pak, as a writer, he's done a really good job here. I really wish this title was being got more attention than it did. I wish the sales were higher. It does deserve it. I think it's just kind of it's a new concept. Or I think you said maybe if this was. Is this a brand new milestone character, or is this based on previous characters? Do you know? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, it's brand new. These aren't characters that showed
Yeah.
up in the old version of
Yeah.
Milestone.
Well, I'm impressed. Like I said, we're 5 issues in here, and I'm not sure. Is this actually a series, or is this going to just be 6 issues long? I don't even know.
Yeah, as far as I know, it's an ongoing. I haven't
Oh,
seen anything about it being
I'm
a
glad.
limited.
I'm glad
Yeah,
because I'm enjoying this more than some DC ongoing. So
yeah,
that's good.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on. We have a new Titans United. We really enjoyed the first one, so we have a new one. This one's Titan United Bloodpact, written by Kevin Scott, Lucas Myers, the artist, Tony Avina on colors, Carlos and Mangwal on letters. Man, this was some fantastic art and an interesting story. What did you think?
You know what? I enjoyed the first Titans United series. Kevin Scott surprised the heck out of me. And once again, this is another series. Again, Kevin Scott's also the writer on this one, too. I love the art. This feels like the old Teen Titans to me, even though it's, the continuity is not exactly the same. It's a little wonky. There's a mixture of old Titans and new, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But it just works for me. It's not exactly the same, but it feels familiar enough that I'm really enjoying it. It's actually kind of. I wish this is what Young Justice was. I wish Fitzmartin captured the magic of Young Justice the way Kevin Scott captures the essence of the classic Teen Titans. The in Titans United here, because this is a way of sort of making me feel. This feels like the classic Teen Titans to me under Wolfman and Perez, but yet these are older characters, but yet the same characters. But it just feels like the sensibilities are the same, and I find that it works quite well. And the essence of this story. This opening issue is just firing on all cylinders. It's basically one long action scene with the Titans United fighting the Fearsome Five, and it's one long action scene that ends with Brother Blood and Mother Mayhem showing up at the end and basically convincing Raven and taking over Raven, and then basically Tim Drake finally arriving on the scene, only to discover a statue of Raven, suggesting, I think, that maybe time has been changed, and there's a statue of Raven, and something has happened because of what Brother Blood has done, because the Titans are ultimately defeated because Brother Blood utilizes the Fearsome Five, but just before the Fearsome Five are going to be handily defeated by Titans United, Brother Blood shows up with Mother Mayhem, and ultimately by the time Tim Drake gets there in civilian clothes, he ends up confronting Jinx, who's a member of the Fearsome Five, but as she tells him that something is amiss because this particular story, this opening issue, is called Conversion, and it ends with the statue of the Church of Raven, as opposed to the Church of Brother Blood. So, what happened here? Did time change? Where did that statue come from? So I got a lot of questions. I'm a little confused with how this ended, or maybe you can explain it to me. But I think it's probably going to be explained in subsequent issues. But I really like this. I thought it was, you know, I'm guessing there's some time travel shenanigans, or something's been changed in the past by Brother Blood and Mother Mayhem, and I'm looking forward to it because I had a lot of fun in Titans United. Those opening that original series with Starfire and Blackfire and all that jazz. I had a lot of fun, and Kevin Scott here continues to impress me. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. I mean, it all has, as far as the change of reality, it all has to do with that bloodstone that the fearsome five, or the feeble five, as Garth likes to refer to them, which I thought was great. I mean, Kevin Scott just he knows these characters. Clear that he has history reading the Titans and knows these characters. But yeah, when Raven touches it, Brother Blood sort of tempts her and says, "Hey, this bloodstone was created by your father Trigon, and it's your destiny." And she touches it, and it seems to, yeah, literally change reality. There's a big cocoon, and then when Tim Drake comes to, he's no longer in costume. He talks about not being a hero anymore, but still a hero, even if he's not necessarily, in costume or what have you. And then, yeah, he helps rescue somebody who's being attacked by this disciple of Brother Blood. And talks about the Church of Blood, and he must be fighting against. She's like, "What are you talking about? It's the Church of the Raven." So yeah, clearly by Raven interacting with this bloodstone, it's sort of changed reality. So I don't know if it's necessarily time travel per se, more like a retcon, or something was changed in the past, but we're not in the past. We are still in present day. So yeah, again, what I love about this, what we loved about the Titans United, the first series, is that you don't need to read anything else in DC. It doesn't matter where this fits or what have you. It totally stands on its own. You can almost say it's like a Black Label book in that way. It's not mature themed or oversized or anything, so it's not getting the Black Label trade dress or anything. But it is totally standalone. And I think they're stamped with that "Watch the Titans" on HBO Max. So it's exactly what we were talking about with the Justice Society Files one-shots, or kind of what we think DC should have done with Black Adam, right? Like, if you have a property on another medium that's popular enough and you want people to have a series they can jump on that is new reader friendly, but still has, action and great art and all that, because Lucas Meyer's art here is absolutely fantastic, then that's what this is. It's such a gorgeous book in color, in action, the way the colors pop off the page, the energy's crackling. Lucas Meyer's got some fantastic page layouts. There's a couple of double page spreads with Brother Blood when he first gets his hands on the Bloodstone, and then when Raven touches it and there's that big cocoon, we get a close-up of all these different faces from the Titans and the Fearsome Five to see their reaction in that moment. Like, this is just a fun comic. that doesn't require a lot of thought, in terms of, oh, well, what happened to the Teen Titans of the past? Well, what's going on with Dark Crisis? Wait, what was Future State? Who's Red X? You don't need any of that. You can just pick this up and read it within the covers, the front and back cover of this comic is everything you need to know about this comic and about these characters. And anything that you're not quite sure about, just keep reading, and Kevin Scott's going to tell you. So I think this is fantastic. I love this approach, and it's working for me on a lot of levels. So,
Yeah.
all right. Speaking of fantastic writers, up next we have The Flash, number 786, High Speed Alert, from writer Jeremy Adams. M&K Nahelapan is the artist, Jeremy Cox and Peter Pantazis on colors. We've got Justin Birch on letters. Man, is this a lot of fun, and is this a perfect example of how you can tell a story that ties into a bigger story. I mean, writers they don't always have complete control over, their own book in terms of, hey, I've got to, cross over with, this big event that's going on. But so, Jeremy Adams is doing that, and he's doing it well. He's still having the Flash family as, part of this event, but he still takes the time to give us great character moments, whether it's Irie, putting Damian Wayne in his place, or Wally teaming up with his kids to trick Linda into letting the kids come along, or whether it's Jay Surge, as he comes to call himself, learning about the power of doing the thunderclap that super strength
Yeah.
heroes can do, and you get a hand clap, and you get a hand clap, and you get a hand clap. Like, we get everything we need for the Dark Crisis tie-in, and it all makes perfect sense, and it advances that story really, really well. But we never lose sight. We never lose the tone and the feel of the regular Jeremy Adams Flash book, which Jeremy was on the show and said to both of us, yeah, I want it to be a book that's for all ages. I want it to be fun. I want it to be accessible. I don't ever want it to be a book where a parent wouldn't want their kid to read it. That's what this is. It's family friendly in more ways than one, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's great for all ages. It's also family friendly in that it highlights the Flash family. We're not
It's-
just getting Wally here and Linda, who's yet to get a code name, and we're not just getting are they called the Tornado Twins in the future? Isn't that what they're
I
called?
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, here it's just obviously Jay and Irie, but
Yeah.
we're also getting Jay Garrick Flash. We're getting Max Mercury. We're getting Jesse Quick. Yeah, it's just, this is everything I want in a Flash comic. And I'm saying that as somebody who, I'm not a Wally West guy, I'm a Barry Allen guy. Not that I don't enjoy Wally, but my first choice of Flash is always going to be Barry Allen. So I think for fans of of Wally West Flash in that kind of golden era that people think about, the Jeff Johns run, the Mark Waid run, when it was Wally and Linda and the kids. This harkens back to that in so many ways, and the fact that Jeremy Adams is able to do that in the current DCU, which is, can be a little depressing these days. He keeps it light, he keeps it fun, and he gets to even write Power Girl and make her fun and interesting. So, I mean, this was just a fantastic issue. I was sort of surprised that when you said you had multiple favorite of the week, like
Yeah.
I thought this was going to be one of them. I was kind of surprised when you
Well,
named the other
this
two.
is a good one. I give high compliments to this one too. I don't want to interrupt you because there's so
I
much to
know.
like about this. Is
No,
there's so much to like about
yeah,
this.
that was the last I was going to say. Other than the other thing about this book that's been super consistent throughout the run with Noella Pan's art is the Jeremy Cox colors. He's joined by Peter Pantazis on this issue, but like I always say, those bright colors that pop off the page, those primary colors that help to give it a traditional superhero feel. So the art and colors in this one are as fantastic as ever. Some great double page spreads. And yeah, those character moments. There are a couple of them that
Yeah.
are so fun. Um,
Yeah.
doing the Surge doing the cannonball was another fun moment.
Yeah.
So
I like the moment where Jay was bugging Arsenal about his cap, saying, "Are you
Yeah.
sure you like wearing that cap? It's like, are you sure you like that cap you're wearing?" It's like, yeah, it doesn't really look very good, and even and even Raven is tending to agree with Jay. But yeah, there's so many fun moments in this issue. I love seeing Maxine Baker. I think this is her debut as Animal Girl in costume as Animal Girl. That's what I love. So you seeing Maxine Baker show up and have Ivory get so excited, like two girls excited to meet each other while they're battling bad guys. It was so much fun. And I have to make this one criticism of DC, not this comic. I love this comic, but how tragic that we got World Without a Justice League with those terrible tie-ins about World Without a Justice League. This is a Dark Crisis tie-in. Why? Because we got Clarion the Witch Boy. Clarion the Witch Boy is a member of the Dark Army. Think of how much better we could have gotten with every DC title having one member of the Dark of Pariah's Dark Army attacking a number of heroes in any random number of DC books. It would have been so much better than the nonsense and the nonsensical storyline of whatever the hell they're trying to say in World Without a Justice League. This is Jeremy Adams. This feels so much fun. And when you think about it, what he pulled off was masterful because Clarion the Witch Boy is empowered by the great darkness. And Clarion the Witch Boy, it's so funny as Clarion the Witch Boy is looking so dark and ominous. And he's basically reading the riot act to bear, Wally's really trying to scare him. And he's about to do his magical coup de grace. And then all of a sudden he discovers that Wally, while you were talking, I just did a containment spell that I learned from my other
Yeah.
friends. I mean, it was so funny. Totally took the wind out of Clarion the Witch Boy's sails. And it was just when you're expecting this epic, really dark moment becomes a moment of comedy and levity that is so welcoming in the context of this comic, and particularly in the context of this dark and gloomy crisis, where this is an absolute breath of fresh air. And when you think that there's kids here involved in this fight, with Linda just getting her own costume and her debut in her costume, Maxine Baker debut her costume as Animal Girl. There's so much to love here. The dialogue is fun. This is absolutely a comic that I mean, this is a joy to read. I wish every Dark Crisis tie-in would be like this. And kudos to Jeremy Adams, man. I mean, man, you can just tell the guy is passionate about this character. This is a title that keeps getting better and better. So yeah, I mean, really a great comic book.
Yeah, yeah, it's so good. It's so fun. It's just you read it, it brings a smile to your face. So,
Yeah.
okay, last book we're going to talk about. Specifically, there are a couple of other single issues that came out, and like I said, the Harley Quinn we'll do separately. But the final one is DC versus Vampires All Out War #3, written by Alex Packnadel and Matthew Rosenberg. Pencil, ink, and gray tone by Pasquale Quilano. Red tones by Nicola Wright. Letters by Troy Petrie. And then we have the backup, which sort of gives the origin of how Dick Grayson became the king of the vampires, which is written by Emma Viselli with art by Hanning. Letters by Troy Petrie. So, what'd you think of this?
Well, I one of the things that's made artistically how this DCV Vampires All Out War has stood out artistically, and I'm assuming they're going to do this for all 6 issues. This is the third issue. Is everything's in black and white and red, and I'm not a big fan of it, but I will admit that there are moments where artistically it looks kind of cool. I will say in this particular issue, I find that there were moments where I was actually very confused as to what was going on, and I wasn't sure who some of the characters were. But having said that, I understand the gist of the story, and to be very blunt, I'm enjoying DC Vampires. I'm not enjoying it as much as Deceased, but what I like about it is it's sort of like that. It's taken that Injustice playbook, where you have a totally alternate universe with DC characters that are all 100% expendable, all in service of a good story. This is a good story. Uh, you know, uh, miles will vary in terms of, whether you like this more than Deceased or what have you. Obviously, that's up to individual readers, but there's a story to be told here. It's plot centric, it's plot heavy, but it's got good character work. Alex Picknadall and Matthew Rosenberg, I think, are in fine form here. Matthew Rosenberg, in particular, continues to get a very good handle and solidify himself as a solid DC writer. I think he's making more of a name for himself at DC than he did when he was over at Marvel. Mind you, I'm not familiar with all his Marvel work, but in any event, I uh, I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. I'm not entirely familiar who Baron Cinder is, but apparently you and I had some questions as to was that Lex Luthor? It was Lex Luthor, but apparently it's Baron Cinder in Lex Luthor's armor, and Baron Cinder is this character. He's trying to keep his body together, and he feeds off cosmic radiation that Starfire has. We find out that Starfire is still alive. Starfire, of course, was it was her blood when one of the vampires. Starfire has the ability. Her blood is so unique that when a vampire tastes Starfire's blood, they gain the ability to stay alive in sunlight or something. It makes them more powerful or something. And in any event, so Starfire is a key player. This involves a couple of teams going in, led by Deathstroke, along with Batwoman, going in to rescue Starfire and also ultimately to rescue Weather Wizard, because Weather Wizard is controlling and blocking out the sun. Starfire has the ability to power up Baron Cinder, and she's got a unique blood as well. And ultimately, of course, the key players here are Weather Wizard, Starfire, and ultimately we know Supergirl is a key player over, and she's in Australia in the main series proper of this DC universe, all with the idea of bringing back the sunlight in order to ultimately defeat the vampires that are led by the King Vampire himself, Dick Grayson. And it's Dick Grayson in the backup feature where we learn how Dick Grayson became King of the Vampires, and that involved him being led into sort of being tricked and betrayed by his half sister Miranda, uh, Miranda Zuko, to ultimately become, unfortunately, attacked, successfully eaten or bitten by vampires to become king of vampires, and ultimately killing the queen of, I think, the Queen of Scots, the head vampire queen. But a lot of action here. We already saw the death of Constantine. We see in this issue we see more death, more destruction. Interesting use of color. Again, I was there's a couple sequences that I thought were a little wonky to me, but I liked the fact that this we have Azrael. I actually like that Batman is not actually in this series. Batman has actually stayed dead, and Azrael is sort of like he's sort of in the Batman lead, and we are told here that apparently Dick Grayson, the head of the vampires, wants Azrael to be his right hand vampire man, so to speak. And so we'll see what comes of that. This seems like a series that never seems to want to end. This DCV Vampires, it seems to be going on forever. But I gotta admit, the story is not bad. Not as good as Deceased. Deceased, I would love to have more series of Deceased. But this DC Vampires are slowly growing on me more and more. Um, Nothing really stands out as really like rocking my world here. Although I do like the kick-ass Mary Marvel her, because she's, especially because she's has a red costume. She really looks amazing on the page in these black, white, and red pages. But and Batwoman too. A lot of gorgeous pages. When there's one particular page that's gorgeous, Batwoman and Starfire. Starfire's rescuing Batwoman, and because of the shades of red utilized, some of the pages here look really, really gorgeous. Just coincidentally, because of the colors of the costumes of the various characters in play. So. Um, I think that overall, I think this is going to read probably much better when this 6 issue series is collected as maybe a hardcover. This is probably going to look better, maybe as an oversized hardcover. The black, white, and red might really pop off the page better than reading it individually for me. But I'll have to wait and see. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I didn't enjoy this particular issue as much as past issues. I feel like past issues we got a lot more of characterization of these characters, of characters that we're familiar with, whether it be Slade or John Constantine or whomever, Midnighter. Uh, like scenes of them in this world that's obviously, different than anything they ever expected, and so they act a little bit differently. And maybe in the case of Slade, he's a little more hardcore. In the case of Supergirl, she seems a little more, kind of run down and kind of on her last legs, if you will, a little resigned to not being able to help since there's no sunlight. So interesting characterization, because they're characters, and the characterization is somewhat true, but it's skewed based on the fact that they're in this interesting situation that we haven't seen before. World, the DC universe run by vampires. We got a lot less of that in this issue. In this issue, we got almost like this heist plot to break into this blood farm and rescue Starfire. And so this issue felt a little bit more plot driven, right? Like we know one team needs to go in and rescue Weather Wizard, because apparently Weather Wizard can, clear all the ash and bring the sunlight back and really kind of give humanity a chance to defeat the vampires. The other half of people are going after Starfire. Not really sure exactly why, other than obviously she's a very powerful hero and she can't be converted into a vampire. So I didn't enjoy this issue as much as previous issues, just based on that. I kind of missed that characterization. This felt like a more plot-driven issue. I also kind of feel the same way you do about the art. Like, it was cool, in the first issue to see something different, and I thought it kind of worked, being that it's just black and white and grayscale with a little bit of red here and there. But there's so much red in this issue and this is the third issue of this now, so the novelty of it is kind of worn off for me. So I didn't enjoy the art as much either. It's not to say the art is bad by any means. I think the art is still really, really good. But I question whether it wouldn't be just as good if it was full color. And then as far as the backup story, I feel the same way that I did about the first part. Like, I appreciate that we're getting the story of how Nightwing got turned into the King of the Vampires, but I said it at the time when Dick Grayson or Nightwing was revealed as the head of the vampires. I felt like it was totally a decision made purely for shock value. Like, who's the character that's most beloved in the DCU, and let's make him the bad guy, right? You could have made an argument for Wally West. Wally's been put through so much crap in the last 8 years or so, between Heroes in Crisis and all that aftermath, that I think they probably decided, we better leave him alone. Well, who's up next? Well, Dick Grayson, right? The one everybody, if Wally embodies hope in the DC universe, then Dick Grayson, I would argue, embodies heroism in the DCU, and Superman would be kind of inspiration. But yeah, Dick is Dick is a hero's hero, right? Who all the other heroes look up to. And so, again, feels like shock value. I'm not a big fan of the choice, so every time we get one of these backup stories of how he became a vampire, it's just a reminder that he is King of the Vampires, which I don't particularly enjoy that decision. That being said, it is sort of interesting, and it's not like he had a choice. I mean, they literally all laid on top of him. Hundreds of vampires attack him, and he gets
Yeah.
bit. What choice does he have? And you mentioned he does kill the oldest of the vampires, hoping that it was in time to stop himself from being turned. It wasn't. He does kill Mary, or it kills Pandora, the oldest and strongest of them, and then asks, where's Mary, Queen of Blood, who is, obviously the most powerful and leader of the vampires. So he's now a vampire. How does he go from being just a vampire to taking out Mary, Queen of Bloods, and being the king of the vampires? I mean, maybe there's still some of the heroism left in him at this point, and he thinks, if I can kind of dethrone or depose Mary, Queen of Blood, I can take over and I can rule the vampires in a altruistic way. But then maybe just the fact of being a vampire corrupts him. I don't know. But in terms of the story, I guess I'm a little curious, but I could do without this, mostly because I just like to ignore the fact that Dick Grayson is the king of the vampires. So,
But
yeah,
you make an interesting point though that I never caught until you said it. So you think that actually is a good point. Dick Grayson says, I couldn't stop it from happening. I couldn't. So he's thinking that if he kills the queen of the vampires, he'll stop his transformation into a vampire. You think that's what he's thinking?
Yeah. I mean
I don't know.
that's all I could that's all I could think because he gets attacked and his sister's there saying, "Is it
Yeah,
done? Has he been turned?" And when all the other vampires pull away, she says, "You killed Pandora, the oldest and strongest of us." He's like, I had no choice, but I was too late." So it was like, yeah, he was thinking, she was probably the one that, that looks to be the main one that bit him. So he was trying to stop her.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, and maybe it has something to do with that's how he gets so powerful, even though he's a newer vampire, right? Because he
yeah.
was bit by her, but then he killed her. So does some of her, longevity? Because he would be I mean, typically the way vampire lore works, if somebody turns you, then you're kind of an underling of the vampire that turned you.
Right.
Well, he doesn't worry about that because he's already killed the vampire that
Yeah. Well,
that
plus
turned
he's
her.
bitten by all of them, so I don't know which one do you pick.
Yeah, I mean he's bitten on the neck. It looks like he's bitten on the neck by Pandora, but yeah, he's got bites all over because they all fell
Yeah.
upon him. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But
It's
she's definitely
interesting.
the first one. Yeah, she's definitely the first one that bites him because you see it if you scroll up a little bit on that page. You see him kind of tears running down his face, and
Right.
um, she's leaning over his neck, and then she bites him, and then they all kind of fall upon him. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so interesting story. I'm not the biggest vampire guy, and I've been kind of up and down about the DC vampires corner or whole story arc or world, if you will, because like we've both talked about, yeah, it started to catch on and was successful. So now they got to milk it. Like don't do that. Don't be Marvel, DC. You're not Marvel. Don't try to go to the well too often. So
Okay.
uh, anyway, let's talk about a few of the other single issues that are coming out today. Like I said, there is that Harley Quinn 30th anniversary special, 100 pages. We'll cover that in a spotlight that'll come out tomorrow. There's also Looney Tunes issue number 268, and then we have some collections. Dark Knights of Steel Volume 1 has a hardcover. The second volume of Robin, the Joshua Williamson's Lazarus Island story, has its second trade paperback come out. There is a trade paperback of Blue Beetle. We know there's a Blue Beetle movie on the way. Jamie Reyes, book 1, trade paperback. Batman's No Man Land gets Omnibus Volume 2. That was a huge story. Went on for like a year and a half, which was interesting. It's notable for two things, I would say, more than the story itself, which is good, but kind of typical comic book fare. But it's notable for the first appearance of Harley Quinn in the regular DCU, and also the introduction of Cassandra Cain. And you could argue about which is most important there. Harley Quinn and the Gotham City Sirens get an omnibus hardcover. War for Earth 3 gets a trade paperback. Honestly, I'd have to recommend staying away from that. Rocky and I
Yeah.
are both pretty disappointed in the way that all played out.
Yeah.
If you're curious about it, you can go back and listen to our spotlights where we talked about those 5 issues on their own individual episodes. And then finally, Black Adam, the Dark Age trade paperback with a really cool Alex Ross cover. And this is Peter J. Tomasi, pencils by Doug Mahnke. And it collects the 6-issue miniseries that came out of the 52 weekly
Yeah.
series.
And that's a
So
very good series. I enjoyed
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is very, very good.
So
So
what's your pick of the week? As if I don't know.
my pick of the week, actually, you know what? It might not be quite as clear cut as you think because there's a lot of options. I mean, Batman. I mean, World's Finest. One of your co-picks was very good. Batman the Knight was very good. Duo was very good. But at the end of the day, and part of the reason I'm picking this, and in interest of full disclosure, is oftentimes there's like oftentimes 2 books, and you'll pick one and I'll pick the other. This time there's like 3. You pick 2, I'll pick the other, and I'll go with Flash 786 with an honorable mention to Nightwing because that one was awfully good as well. I mean, there really were quite a few great books this week, but yeah, and again, that the Guy Gardner characterization and War of the Undead
Yeah.
Gods just still has me laughing. But yeah, I'll go with the Flash. I thought it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, you know what? When you and I were talking about it, I changed my mind. Your excitement about it and my talking about it and your excitement about it, I'm gonna pick the Flash too. It does edge
Oh,
out World Finest and Deceased. The Guy Gardner scenes in Deceased are pretty damn funny. World's Finest is good. Nightwing's good, but no, Flash. Flash just had too many great moments. So I got to go with Flash. I got to go with Flash, man.
There we go. Glad to have you on board.
Yeah,
Again, not that the others weren't deserving, but yeah, I think overall it was a solid week, despite a few, and again, nothing bad. Just I had higher expectations for a few of these things.
yeah,
So
oh, for sure.
uh, anyway, we've been talking about it for a while. I know it's going to happen. We're going to get to the unboxing video. We're going to get to the best jacket. I just had some family stuff going on, daughter's birthday and whatnot. So promise we're going to get to it. Also should have some interviews up later this week with some creators with some crowdfunding, some Zoop campaigns that are going on. So look for that later this week. Did you get a chance to do your independent
Yeah,
episode this week?
yesterday it's up online here. I did Jim at Weird Science. We did reviewed some independent comics. There's something about something wrong with Patrick Todd and True
Great.
Cult #2, and there's a couple of other ones there. Masquerade by Kevin Smith, and there's yeah we've just check out the Comic Boom YouTube site here, and it's on the main cover page of Comic Boom ! And so yeah, and we'll be doing some more of Scott Snyder, reviewing some of Scott Snyder's comics with you. Hopefully later on this week, Jace, and eventually we'll do that unboxing with all those boxes you got behind you there.
Oh man, I can't wait to get them. Not necessarily to get at what's inside them. I mean that is a consideration, but mostly just to get them off my floor and put away.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget to head over to YouTube if you're listening to us on the audio only, and subscribe to Rocky's channel so you don't miss out on any of the other content he's creating. You can even join us for these spotlights over there so you can see our smiling faces and the books and the artwork as we're talking about them. So it's Comic-Boom! On YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, ring the notification bell, all that stuff that you guys are familiar with. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time and you want to listen to some other Comic Source content, whether it's new content that's coming out or the thousands of previous episodes that are in the library, just go to wherever you get your podcast and do a search for the Comic Source and you'll find us. So again, we appreciate the support and for having you join us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you guys later.